Thank you very much, Christi, for agreeing to meet with me today. The title of your exhibition at the Art Gallery of Guelph is called Uprising, and it does encompass 30 pieces of stunning work, which is a mid-career perspective, which actually shows your 25 years of art making throughout your career. The first question that I'd like to ask you is, what makes Métis art unique?
Well, thank you very much for welcoming me here to do this interview virtually. I think that because of COVID, I don't really enjoy doing Zoom, but at the same time, I do appreciate the fact that the technology exists for us to be able to talk, although being in completely separate parts of the world. To your question about what makes Métis art unique, Métis art, I can only speak to the context of the people who I'm from and related to. My grandparents come from a place called Manitousac, which is Lac Saint Anne, Alberta. My late grandparents were Cree-speaking people. They never passed that down to my father, and so therefore I don't speak my language. But it's important for me to acknowledge the land on which my ancestors lived and were part of. And in that context, everybody's art, when it comes to indigenous people, is always related to the lands from which they come from. And with Métis art, it's no different in the sense of the community of Lac Saint Anne was deeply and is deeply entrenched into the water of the lake, which is said to have healing properties. The lake itself is filled with medicines, and the surrounding area is filled with medicines and plants. The floral beadwork was practiced widely, not just among the community of Lac Saint Anne, but across the Prairie provinces and into the Great Lakes in terms of Métis people. And of course, floral work extended beyond the borders of what is now Canada, the United States, because those borders came after. And so wherever there was Michif people, we tended to do floral beadwork or floral embroidery or quill work and things along those lines. Also moose hide tanning, deer hide tanning, those types of things were very prevalent and necessary for survival, and whatever other kind of traditional arts were practiced. There's a whole range of them. So arts are deeply entrenched into our identity and into who we are and the lands that we come from.
Can you talk a little bit about the spiritual aspect of your work, Christi? Because it is very prevalent in all of your work, and it is a large part of who you are.
Sure. The Revolution of Love is a painting that is about 15 feet wide by about 6 feet tall, I think, or no, not quite, about 5.5 feet tall. And it's a painting that shows Josephine, the late grandmother Josephine Mendamen, at the center of it, surrounded by whole groups of people fading off into the distance, sort of suggesting thousands, who are gathered in water and surrounded by water and the beings that live in water, because Josephine was a powerhouse of a leader, and she walked around every single Great Lake carrying a pail of water and praying to the water, and others joined her in this movement. She created the water walking movement, and people are still continually walking around their bodies of water or along their rivers making those prayers. And so her leadership on this awoken within many people the idea or the acknowledgement that water is sacred and water is life. Of course, it's a thought that many people share across the world, so it's not a new thought. But in the sense of that she took action for it, um, and involved the prayer and ceremony in that action, made it accessible and meaningful to so many people that we still continue her work. Of course, not as strongly as she did, because she just was that kind of a leader. But a lot of us are still continuing the work in the way that we can. And making prayers and petitions for the water. We believe that the water is medicine, and all water is medicine, and it has the potential to heal. And when the water is clean on the earth, then we also benefit from that as a human species, as do all other species on the planet. So our spirituality is deeply tied to the health of the planet and to the earth and to the animals and to the waters. So when we also, as women, think about water, we're thinking about water in the wombs of mothers for children being born, and not just humans. Again, all species, and we're thinking about the sacredness of water and how it holds life. And these are the deeply entrenched understandings and teachings, I guess, belief systems that seem to be threaded and seem to exist within other indigenous, like all other indigenous nations. I can't speak to those other nations, but I can say that I've seen and witnessed commonalities.
So just to talk about that a little bit further, one of the pieces that I also am very attracted to is called "The Fish Are Fasting for Knowledge." And that piece in particular is very intriguing and interesting. How does the current state of degradation of the environment translate into your work? Is that a part of that story, Christi, in that particular piece?
It's always part of all of my paintings, I would say, because there's, I want people to not just enjoy the quote unquote pretty flowers, as once my art was dismissed as not being important, because they just consider it to be maybe beautifully aesthetic or something, and then it reminds them of tapestry, and therefore it's not saying anything more than that to some people. But I want people to feel connected to the earth, and then I want people to rise up to protect it. So in order to have the motivation to get up and to get out there and to say things and to speak up and to maybe even organize in your own community to protect your pond, your stream, your bird, your species at risk sanctuaries, the habitats for all the other beings that we share this planet with. In order to do that, you have to be motivated. In order to be motivated, you have to have your heart connected to something that motivates you to do it. And so my art is always at once a soothing balm for myself, because of the things that you see around the world online. I mean, there's only so much of that violence that you can really take. At the same time, it's an expression of my culture, my people, the lands and waters where I live and where I come from. It's also a call to action for people to see the beauty within themselves, to see themselves connected to the earth, interconnected with every living species, and then to stand up and fight for it. So there's that in every single piece. In terms of The Fish Are Fasting, it's a piece that is also based on a story that Isaac Murdoch, my friend and my colleague, told me, about fish that fast at a certain time of year, and then we're not supposed to go out and fish for them. And it's during the winter at a certain, from a moon to a moon sort of thing. and because they're actually fasting for knowledge, which they gain from the stars. And then when we fish for them after, we're bringing that knowledge into our bodies when we eat the fish. So there's a very spiritual fabric of this world that exists, that's steeped in mystery and magic, and we are constantly surrounded by spirits. We're living on a ball of water, circling a ball of fire. There is nothing more spiritual than existence. And so by just existing on this magical, amazing world that we live on, that we have the privilege of living on for a very short period of time.
Indeed.
Everything is a call to action, and everything is spiritual simultaneously.
I want to just delve into a little bit about the process with your work. So your pieces are incredibly large, and I'm wondering, when you tackle a painting like, say, The Revolution of Love, how much time does it take you to do a piece like that?
That's a good question. I can't really gauge, only to say that when I get into it, I don't like to break away from it. So when I get into it, I like to, I'll get up in the morning. I might make a cup of tea, I might not, and then I'll run down to wherever I need to be. Like that one had to be painted in my basement because it was the only one that was large enough. And I staple a canvas to the wall, a raw canvas, and I proceed to prep it, and then start to paint. And with that one, it was probably a month of just getting up in the morning and then going to sleep like really, really late. So we're talking about 12 hours a day, maybe on average, and then do that every day for about a month.
I can't imagine that you could even sleep when you're doing something like that, because it's very, are you using a small brush? What kind of tool are you using, Christi, when you do that intricacy with pieces like that?
Like the one behind me, the dots?
Yeah.
A knitting needle.
Knitting needle. Incredible. I cannot wrap my head around that, but it is absolutely incredibly beautiful. In 2015, you were approached by the House of Valentino to use some of your beadwork images on their fashions for Paris Fashion Week in 2016. I did go and see some of the images that were produced. Incredible fashions, but I wonder if you could speak to your experience with all of that.
The House of Valentino is an Italian-based, of course, mega, well-known fashion house, and it was very interesting to work with them. They chose a painting called Water Song to depict and interpret into some of their designs. We discussed the designs. One of their lead people came to meet me in Toronto, and we sat down and discussed these things. And it was a really good experience. I did ask them ahead of time if they had any history of appropriation and what their stance was on environmental, sourcing of materials, and how do they do that. And they had a very good response and a good track record on that. Unfortunately, they went on to appropriate Indigenous art following that, which was very disappointing. I thought that by me asking the questions and them answering that would also sort of clue them into the fact that it wasn't acceptable. One thing that did happen was my artwork, of course, got taken and stolen and used by very many little mom and pop sort of shops that were set up on the internet, like storefronts, fake storefronts.
Oh gosh.
And then it was just like, it was impossible to stop after that. So they were doing Valentino knockoffs is what they were doing. And they were taking my art and using it in that way. So that was not a good experience, but working with them was a good experience. And of course their designs were just, fabulous, like just so absolutely beautiful, stunning, especially that one with the sheer. And it's almost like she was wearing a garden You know,
Oh, absolutely beautiful.
that was my favorite. Other people liked other ones, but that was definitely my favorite. Yeah.
Would you do it again?
I would do it again if there was, now knowing what I know, just to put in some sort of more protections and safeguards. But yeah, of course I would do it again. It was a great experience. I actually have some ideas for fabric and fashion design myself, so I would love to work with a fashion house to do more.
That's really exciting. That certainly would put you on the map in an even more global way, without a doubt.
Yeah, I have my hand in many pots, and I doubt that I'm ever going to get to it though. You know, jack of all trades, master of none, sort of thing.
So where the exhibition will be leaving the AGG, Christy? Where is it going to next?
It's going to be going to the McMichael,
Oh,
Weinberg. It'll be there until I believe January something. Sorry, I just don't have the dates off the top of my head, but it's going to be opening shortly after it closes in Guelph.
thank you very much for participating this morning with me. You didn't know me and I didn't know you, but you said yes easily. So thank you very much.